Good morning, John. Good morning, Christian. Thank you for joining our first C series webinar, executive series webinar. Christian, it is indeed an honor and delight to host you and Dr. McIntyre this morning on behalf of US-India Business Summit, Georgia Tech CIBER, and our participating and supporting organizations, Georgia Department of Economic Development, Forward Foresight, Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, Next Generation Manufacturing, Connex, USIBRC, and Marshall Automation. I welcome you to this webinar, which is titled as Pre and Post Pandemic Accelerated Corporate Transformation and Implications to Manufacturing, Consumer Trends, and Global Markets. This is our first event of 2021, and hopefully this will be a better year for all of us. With this, I would like to introduce my co-chair as well as partner in presenting this event, Dr. John McIntyre from Georgia Tech. John is director of Georgia Tech CIBER Center for International Business Education and Research and a professor of management and international affairs in Scheller College of Business and Samnon School of International Affairs in Georgia Tech. He's a tenured professor, very well known in international circles of USA as well as India and abroad France. And John, with this, on to you.
Thank you, Annie, and good morning, all. It's a pleasure to welcome you and greet you today, to welcome Christian Fischer, our first keynoter in a series of webinars. Christian is the president and CEO of Georgia Pacific. But before I introduce him, I wanted to say a few words about a company that is known to all of us in Georgia and the southeastern region of the United States. And a company that is sort of a part of an industry that is central to the economy of the state of Georgia. A recent report released by Georgia Tech shows that forestry, paper, and pulp amounted to $36 billion in total sale for the total industry in 2019, with more than 140,000 jobs, of which very specifically 62% was in pulp and paper. Christian heads a long, well-known company, well-established, created in 1927. I was reminded by Christian in Augusta. And Christian told me that he was hoping to be in the saddle to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Georgia Pacific. That would be in 2027. So it's a pleasure to introduce him. Christian was born and raised in Germany and began his career at Georgia Pacific in Europe in 1989. So he is a man of the industry and a company man. Started out as a market pulp and paper, market pulp sales manager, and then assumed his current position in 2017. So he has been leading the company for the past 3 years, having previously served in many different positions, preparing him well for the leadership position. He was vice president of packaging and the cellulose segment. He was responsible for the container board and kraft paper, corrugated packaging, bleached board, among others. He relocated from Europe to Atlanta in 1992. Shall we say he knows the lay of the land extremely well, Atlanta, Georgia, the Southeast in the United States. And he advanced through the organization in market and pulp and container board sales. He is involved in the forest industry and serves on many boards, including the American Forest and Paper Association, AF&PA. He's a member of the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. And I note with interest that he serves as vice chairman of the Atlanta International School, which was created in the 1980s. Christian speaks, of course, German, Portuguese, and Spanish, and it's a pleasure to welcome him today to have some remarks, and then we will be following that with targeted questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience for Q&A. So Christian, without further ado, and thanking you yet again for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join all of us, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much at first place, John, Ani, for the kind introduction of me and the company. I shall say here with any false modesty here, humility, that probably the audience here could learn more about some of the implications of the things that we're going to talk about here in the next hour or so from your vast expertise than mine. So let me not say I add expertise to it. Maybe it's just the perspective of somebody who is accountable for a business that, while primarily focused in the United States from a manufacturing and employee standpoint, does business all over the world. So again, thanks for that, and the honor, privilege, and pleasure is mine of acting as your first keynote speaker in this new series. And I hope that I do good enough a job that there'll be a demand for a second one, Ani and John. So I hope I don't.
That's for sure.
I don't do anything wrong. So if this were in 2020, you always got to start somewhere. If this were in 2020, I probably start with, can you hear me? The famous sentence to open any kind of Zoom sessions. But John, Ani, and I did the sound and visual check before that, so I don't need to go there. And I think I can go straight into the topic. Yeah, as we framed it up, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. Well, while we might all agree reasonably closely about when the pandemic started and where, etc., the post-pandemic is still to be defined. We're still in it. And therefore, anything that I say about what the world might look like and some implication about post-pandemic is, of course, in the future, and therefore unknowable and unknown. So, but I'll at least share my thoughts about how we're trying to deal with those unknowns and unknowables, and do well as a company. Again, last thing on the post-pandemic, while we're not there, I think we're all, hopefully I'm speaking for everyone, more optimistic, despite the challenges that still remain, that we're kind of on the way out, and that we'll master all these challenges by collaborating with one another. So looking forward to really calling it a post-pandemic soon. So a few more things that might be useful for the audience about Georgia-Pacific. Not so much history in all details, but to at least frame it up, because it will tell you a little bit more about where I'm coming from or through what lens I'm looking at things. So as John said, almost 100 years old, and we started as a small lumber mill. We started as a private company. We became a public company, and we have been private since 2005, when Koch Industries, which we like to say is the second largest private company in the United States, acquired us in 2005, and we've been private ever since. Headquartered here in Atlanta, of course, about 30,000 employees, and most of those really work in our factories around the country, of which there are 150 plus. I always say 150 to 200. So a couple of other things that might be of interest, just to sketch it out. I mean, our three main businesses, we call them business segments, are really our building products. If you want to move on to the next slide, Ani, you can do that. I'll talk a little bit about that. You just saw the picture of our headquarters. And here, I mean, as I said, we play, if you will, in a couple of big segments. The building products segment, in which we produce such things everybody knows: lumber, plywood, OSB, and gypsum, both for residential but also commercial construction. Our consumer products business, which serves both the at-home as well as the away-from-home channels, with products such as toilet paper, paper towels, but also the brand that is very known around the United States, the Dixie brand of cups and plates. And our packaging and cellulose segment that, as John said, I quote unquote grew up in, which, think about corrugated boxes in packaging, and when it comes to cellulose, think about it as the key raw material to make a lot of paper goods, specifically also in the hygiene sector. Again, paper towels, tissue, but also diapers, and a host of specialty products that are manufactured under that umbrella, that go into things as diverse as hot dogs, tires, ketchup, and so on and so forth. So pretty diverse sort of applications under those three businesses headers. A couple of things that might dimensionally different. we are actually one of the largest dry goods shippers in the country. After a few names that you would all guess who they are. We deal with a lot of suppliers, 30,000 plus of them from all over the globe. We ship a lot of goods. As I said, we spend about $2 billion every year just on freight. We bring a lot of stuff into our 150 plus factories daily. Several thousand, 5,000-6,000 tons of trucks and rail cars arrive every day to unload chips and wood. And we are actually one of the biggest container shippers, combined with Koch Industries, of the United States. And as I said, we do business in a lot of countries. Our cellulose business is probably the most global business in the sense of selling its product pretty much in any country where there isn't an embargo. We sell our products. So pretty global as far as that is concerned. And Ani, if you move to the next slide, I'm going to go from the, call it brass tacks and, fairly concrete type of framing up and giving a sense of Georgia Pacific to kind of get a little bit more into how we think about business, how we practice business, what guides us in business. And that will set us up even more about, okay, how did you apply that pre-COVID, during COVID, and what happens after COVID? So this chart here speaks about one of the key, key legs, underpinnings, if you will, of the philosophy and the approach that guides us. It's what we call these virtual cycles of mutual benefit. So, I mean, the picture on the left tries to do justice on that. But I should start by saying, at a high level, we think and we define the role of business in society as bringing to whoever your sort of customers are a set of better products and services than their otherwise available alternatives, and do so in a responsible way and consuming fewer resources. So at the heart of which, for me, is the essence of sustainability in a business. So that's what we do. Now, then we apply ourselves wherever we think we have certain capabilities to succeed, that we bring the, special ingredient, the better alternative to those customers where we think we can, again, grow more, serve them better, be successful, be profitable and reinvest in our business and keep on going on that. What this graph on the left illustrates is how we think about those capabilities. You have a sort of a list of a combination of capabilities that you think you have demonstrated, proven they work. And you bring those to bear with your key constituencies. Let's talk about the customers, to actually help them solve problems, help them advance, improve people's lives, and so on and so forth. But to the extent that you do it and you get trusted and you prove yourself, we believe that new opportunities with those same customers may come up, and you say, wow, that gives me the chance to try some new things, develop some new capabilities, and so on and so forth, which again, in those very relationships, help you create yet another cycle of mutual benefit. But you can also take that new capability to maybe new markets, new customers, and improve them out elsewhere. And that is what we broadly call creating virtual cycles of mutual benefit. The virtual cycles, hopefully I explained that well. The mutual benefit here, I want to again dwell on it very quickly. People call it win-win, and that's okay. It is really about having everyone that you do business with, that is your key constituents, feel that yes, this relationship is good for me. And if you don't achieve that, why would they cooperate with you? Why would employees want to work with you if they don't think you're a good employer? Why would suppliers want to do business with you unless you say, well, these folks pay me well, they treat me well, they value my services, and so on and so forth. So the underpinning of our whole philosophy is we got to create and aspire to create these preferred partnerships by practicing a philosophy of mutual benefit and applying our capabilities and constantly renewing what capabilities we have to create more of those. That is what it is. Now, again, conceptually easy, but what are one of the things that you really got to be good at? Well, you got to figure out and be good at knowing and understanding what your customers really value. And in depth, again, easily said, not easily done. We do believe that this is an eternal journey of discovery with a lot of trial and error. You practice things, they don't work. Most things don't work, but you better find out about them soon so you can focus on those things that really work and, you know, scale them up and help your customers and society in the largest scale that you can, but while being profitable. So when you think about that, again, you hear us talk a lot about being more capability bound in where we go as a company and where we act, the marketplaces we pick, the products we make, the services we provide, versus industry bound. And the great thing about that is, you know, the world is my oyster in theory, but then you got to make choices and prioritize that, because you can't be good at everything anywhere all the time. That's mission impossible. So, but we define ourselves by being capability bound rather than industry bound. So the last thing I'll say about that before I move on the slide is what I just described, those virtual cycles of benefit. For us, it's very important to realize that those do not only happen at a company level, the way I described, but they actually begin and end at an individual level with our employees. We have to create an environment where our employees too have a chance. And John, I know this will appeal to you, given, you know, where you're active in. Actually create an environment of perpetual learning for our people. And, you know, they spend most of their careers and their lives actually working somewhere after they've gone from school, whether it's college or not. And, you know, they got to continue learning. They got to continue learning about what their key abilities are, what the comparative advantages are, what their passions are. And like the business, add new ones as they go to continue helping people, businesses, customers, other employees, etc., do better, and therefore achieve some self-actualization and fulfillment. When, of course, that's aspirational and that's hard work, but we believe that is what we need to do at an individual level with all our employees in order to deliver on it as a company. So that is the number one thing that I point out here, this philosophy of mutual benefit. If you go to the next slide for me, please, Annie. You know, and I'll talk about this in the sense of both pre-COVID and how did it change during COVID and what do we think will carry forward. Even pre-COVID, this other leg of our thinking was, look, mutual benefit is one thing by applying our capabilities in creating referred partnerships, but we have to, as a business and as people, constantly, perpetually transform. Why? Simple. The world doesn't stand still. In fact, the world's moving, in our opinion, faster than ever. And many things that we thought, well, they're moving as fast as they can. They moved even faster during COVID. Think about e-commerce explosion. I mean, we just need to look at our own personal behaviors and how we acted differently and faster, and how our expectation changed, whether that's in leisure or at work. So transformation is happening all the time. And transformation, I find today, you know, everybody uses the word. We do add the word perpetual to it because you're never done with this journey. And, you know, we've been around for 100 years. We don't look like the company that started in Augusta, Georgia 100 years ago. And we won't look the way we are today 100 years from now, but we certainly want to be around as Georgia Pacific. Again, that transformation here is very, very important. Behind the transformation is a tremendous kind of realization that disruption is occurring at a faster pace than ever, which is, on the one hand, you know, very painful. It doesn't come for free. There is no free lunch, but at the same time creates huge opportunities for consumers and society at large. And, you know, disruption can be, you know, good if you practice it also proactively, so it doesn't happen to you. And therefore, you always got to have that mindset. And we try to instill that mindset in ourselves. We got, you know, the ground around us is always crumbling, so to speak. And we got to be ahead of that curve. And COVID told us, yeah, you really have to be. So if I highlight a couple of things around that, even pre-COVID, we realized all that. We realized that our consumers and our customers too, but let me start from the consumer, the person behind it. consumers got wiser and wiser and more demanding. You know, all they need is a telephone and some Wi-Fi access. And again, the world is their oyster. They can't find anything. And as that, you know, they became cleverer, they became more knowledgeable, they had more access, and they became more demanding. They can compare prices. They want to know, they want to have higher visibility. Where is my product? Where can I buy it? When will it arrive? What's the price? What's the alternative? Where else can I buy it? And so on and so forth. But it's not just the visibility, it's also what I call the transparency. You know, many consumers today are not satisfied with that. They want to know, okay, how did you make it? Where did you make it? Where did you source the raw materials or the equipment to make it? Are you being a good citizen? Are you practicing stewardship? And so on and so forth. No wonder we got much more vibrant discussion and expectation around ESG these days, right? And it's not going back. And above all, I would summarize all that, and these are just examples of just an enhanced expectation around a better experience, a better consumer experience. People will choose to buy from A versus B, the same product or similar product, maybe even a higher price if the experience is better. That is my conviction. And so we got to help, as Georgia Pacific, we got to help our customers in between, and we do business with, you know, a vast amount of retailers, online, brick and mortar distributors, middlemen, if you want to call them, that actually bring our product or raw material through the products to the marketplace. We got to help them do exactly that, provide a better experience to the consumer. But interestingly enough, that very customer or middleman, whatever you want to call them, is more and more also raising the expectations of, I want to have the same experience as a business that I'm used to at home as a consumer. So, I mean, the ante is up, is what I'm trying to say here. And I think that's a very challenging journey, and we're prioritizing that as the key centerpiece of our vision for the company. And so as a result of that, you know, we had to, I'll just mention a couple of things. We had to obviously work very hard to adapt our operations to actually be able to deliver on that. As a big manufacturer, I think I explained that, we got to be the manufacturer who helps deliver these goods and services to our customers and our consumers. And that, again, more easily said than done. It's both about efficiency and effectiveness, but it's also about, you know, being much more agile to deliver the goods, as one example. When I think about knowledge and demand management across the supply chain, also a lot of effort to avail ourselves of new technology that everyone, I'm not telling you anything new, but we're really applying them and investing in them big time. IT in underpinnings, clearly, new systems, clearly, putting the solution in the hand of our operators so they can actually make better decisions faster and on their own. Absolutely. How? Through big data, for example. You know, a few years ago, we had very few sensors. Today, all our important equipment in all these facilities is censored up, so to speak, right? And we get tons of bytes, of terabytes, I can't even quantify that anymore, about data per second, about temperature, vibration, pattern of disruptions, and so on and so forth, that will help us not just monitor and address issues, but also anticipate them before they even happen. Automation to make our products better and the quality better for our consumers. The use of artificial intelligence in so many applications, including near and dear to my heart, allowing our employees to access safety training and troubleshoot equipment without, you know, having to wait for the technician or the expert to come in. But also innovations in, for example, where we source fiber or what fiber we can source and utilize. An example that probably many people can relate to is, I think, especially in this country, we tend to consume a lot of stuffed coffee and so on and so forth in one-way paper cups. And, you know, and in this world about saying, well, where's the paper cup going? In the end, well, it's going in the trash. Well, why is it going in the trash and not being recycled? Because it can't, because of its PE coating. Well, we've invested in technology in several of our mills where we can take those cups in and recycle them without any problem. And sooner or later, obviously, that same technology is socialized around the industry, and that is no longer a problem. But also, when you think down to the product, about making products that are, have more recycled content that many people demand or want to see, products that are more compostable, lots of attention being devoted to that. But also, one thing that I'm very, very excited about is we've invested in a new proprietary technology. We call it Juno, and Juno takes, at this point, commercial waste. Hopefully down the road we can also take it from households, but for the time being, commercial waste that would otherwise go into landfill, and we take it as is, and we put it into this equipment, and we sterilize it, and we take pretty much anything that would have gone to landfill, such as plastics, metal, and the fiber out, and it comes in clean, it comes in sorted, and it can be upcycled, if you will, rather than either be burned or go into landfill. A very exciting technology, and we've been working on it for many years, and we're just about to start up this month or March the first commercial size unit in the Pacific Northwest, and so that we can actually learn from an industrial size operation, and then we want to take that technology around the world. So a very exciting journey. But again, these are more examples of things that we were working in the spirit of those things that are on this page even before COVID. And then, Ani, COVID came. So this is a good tool. Take the next page. Can you go to the next page for me? There you go. Well, you always got to pick a picture. We pick pictures of our people. That is obviously the very first thing that we thought of during COVID. I would put this like we probably went through like every business. You got to say, one, how do you survive in all these unknowns and maybe hit in demand for your products? Secondly is, how do you thrive in it? And thirdly, how do you come out stronger, right? I mean, that always guided me. Part of surviving and thriving was certainly say, we have to take care of these people that you see here on the picture, on the photo. As leadership, in terms of providing resources that may be PP&E or experts and capabilities that say, yeah, here's what the CDC just ordered. Here's the latest insights. Here's what you should do and consider, not at a high level. But thirdly, and really without that, we couldn't have done what I think we did, is really allowing those same people that you see here on the photo, and also office workers, to actually be part of the solution of applying these capabilities, these learnings, the PP&E and all new, and find out new processes and how to actually get work done. Because if they waited for Christian Fischer to give them that answer, they would still be waiting. People really, you need it more than ever, I think, need to make all the people, all your employees be part of the solution and not look at them as they're part of the problem. And only with that could we get our factories, keep our factories going and service our customers with the products they needed. And many of those, they needed big time, as we all know. So I'm not going to get you through a lot of details about toilet paper scarcity. We've read about it, we've experienced it, we went through it. We saw a couple of spikes in, early March, 2 times the demand for consumer products than we usually have. And on just a usual basis, we already tried to run our factories full. So when you get hit with twice the demand, you got to be really creative to work through it and work through it with your customers. But, that's just quote unquote the highlights of the story. On our away from home consumer business, our demand dropped by more than 50%. I remember, before things get really, really busy in the building products market, it was about probably around March where things were so dire that I had discussions with my management team, and we were thinking, do we have to shut down half of our facilities? And, our people did a better thinking, analysis, and scenario planning than I would have been able, because I would probably have kind of gotten a little bit more, well, I don't know if draconian is the right word, but I would probably have taken a couple of more extreme measures. And they said, let's give it another 45 to 60 days, and here's what we'll monitor. And I said, yeah, sounds like good. And 45 to 60 days later, through a very strong repair and remodel market, fell through, Home Depot, Lowe's, and other business partners, because people were spending their money on those things rather than going on a trip. I mean, our factories started to get busy, and when in the summer, the housing market came roaring back, stronger than in a decade, fueling that demand even more. Again, I could only say I'm so glad for my people who thought much better about that than I would have thought, and our factories are running full and continue running full. Our demand for container board and packaging suffered tremendously, just as the economy was taking a huge hit, and things didn't look really good. The same with the cellulose market around the globe. As China, who is the biggest consumer of market pulp, the biggest consumer of packaging around the world, as they said, stop, and the economy went down. I mean, when they catch a cold, I mean, we really suffer from it. And all those things, as China came back, as the demand for hygiene products surged, the demand came back, as e-commerce it grew substantially, and it requires more packaging to get you all the stuff delivered to your doorstep. I mean, the packaging, the market started to soar. So today we are in the most fortunate position that for most of the things we make, we get very strong demand. I got the sanitizer on here. It's an interesting story. I mean, sanitizer and dispensers, we think 2021 is not done, but we are on a trajectory to put more sanitizers, hand sanitizers out there in this year than in the last 3 years combined. And that included 2020. So very interesting, but at the same time, a business like the away from home tissue business still suffers, as people still, mostly work from home, as entertainment venues are still closed. You get the picture. So it's not all a panacea, is what I'm saying. But more importantly, it's not just the highlights, it's also the tremendous uncertainties and gyrations in demand and unpredictability that really, really got felt across all of our businesses. But also we needed to really, more than any time before that, cooperate with our supply chain partners to actually, survive and thrive. And the last part is like what we're putting in place to actually come out stronger on the other end. So, Annie, if you shift the slide to the next one. I've labeled that how we've adapted. I mean, managing through that disruption, I said one thing that seemed counterintuitive versus the pre-COVID world, in which we kind of said, look, I mean, there's so many different consumers, so many tastes, there's so much data available, et cetera, et cetera. I can pretty much guess that John likes a lavender scented toilet paper, but Annie doesn't. I mean, I could go to the level and we say, hey, let's make it all to please John and Annie and everybody, to the smallest segment. Well, look, I don't know what the future will bear, but simplification and focusing on what matters to most people was probably a big mantra and big change during pre-COVID to make it through it and get the product to people in time. And people were much more open to try new things. We added millions, tens of millions of new households during the time. We're not the only company, because people bought what they could get and people were open to try new things. But simplification, also in alignment with our customers and actually ultimately the consumers, was the name of the game in many of our products. We redefined supply chain management and how to actually deliver the goods in less time and with more flexibility than before. And again, couldn't have done it without the increased contributions and of our customers. But we also had to rethink how we get the work done internally. And quite frankly, like a lot of companies, we had added complexity, we had added unwanted bureaucracy, and we had slowed down processes and decision-making processes over the last few years. And we tried to correct this during COVID. and we're going to be better off with that going forward as a result of that. Greater focus on hygiene solutions. We touched on it. Of course, there is. It's not just, you know, give me something that helps me with my hygiene, but really give it to me also so I don't have to touch anything in the broadest sense of the word. I mean, those two things were there, and we talked a little bit about some of these products and we went through. But, you know, our customers, as I said, were getting more demanding rather than less. And now they want to know, well, so when you tell me you deliver these goods, can I rely on that? 2, what if something happens? Can you work through it? And 3, if I need twice as much, what will you do? I don't want to be caught again, you know, short, right? What you would, of course, that's a little bit mission impossible, but the dialogue, the systems, the new ways of working and collaborating, the new ways of sharing knowledge and bringing capability to bear that we each have, that dialogue has substantially improved, and it's probably never been as good as before with our supply chain partners, and obviously we want to continue doing that. I would still say the following through that at a higher level. What really were some of these, you know, lessons learned in this time? At a philosophical level, I would just say, look, having a clear vision, and that's not very detailed, it's more of a North Star. Here's where we're trying to go, was absolutely necessary and beneficial to our employees, but also those that did business with us, number 1. Number 2, having clarity around, okay, we work on a bunch of things, but these are the clear priorities that we have, was really, really important. And then stick to them and monitor them and measure what matters, not measure anything, and provide the feedback, what's working, what's not, and pivoting when you need it to. Again, having these knowledge systems. And underpinning that is a speed. You needed to be faster than ever, and what was good enough pre-COVID was not good enough during COVID, and it won't be good enough post-COVID whenever we get there. And the speed here, really, if that matters, I mean, one of my favorite saying always was, perfection is the enemy of good. It really carried an additional meaning in these times when speed commands a premium. And the other thing too is really, you know, help is all around us. Ani might not have the right answer. John might not, and Christian doesn't have it. But we know where we can get it, and people are willing to help as long as they, again, have this sense that, you know, there's a mutual benefit for it. Not a tit for tat, but a mutual benefit. People are always there to help you, your supply chain partners, your employees, and so on and so forth, inside the firm and outside the firm. And again, what I said before, if there's any one takeaway, is really the employees are part of the solution, they're not the problem. And then Ani, let's go to the last slide here, because at a, you know, knitting these things together that I still think are, one, timeless, and they were good and guiding to us an important pre. They were of the utmost importance during, and I still believe they will guide us in the post-COVID world, is really that philosophy of practicing mutual benefit. And by applying our capabilities in ever new ways, empower the self-actualization. Really, what as business leaders do we need to do, and can we do to remove obstacles? So, and help our people, not do it for them, but help them self-actualize, become the best they can do, so that the combination of all our actions is better than anything we could come up with from a central perspective. We don't have all the knowledge. And in a world that's moving so fast, we actually need to continue building, expanding those knowledge networks within, but also outside the company, even more so outside of the company. And we've got to carry forward that perpetual transformation, because what works today is not going to be good enough tomorrow, and do so all the time and very speedily. So those are the same thoughts that, again, will help us, you know, help guide us, and I think will guide us for the future too. So I'll stop here and open this thing up to questions, John, Ani, and some interaction.
Thank you, Christian, for excellent overview of all the central existential issues manufacturing companies face in times of COVID. And in fact, you have really told us that COVID, in a sense, is an opportunity in a crisis, and you have turned it into that. Annie and I are going to share a series of questions, and I'll lead off, if I may, and we'll turn it over to the audience. The first question I want to raise with you is really more focused on the consumer, sort of the linchpin at the top of this vault. And it has to do with a touchless economy, the advent of the touchless economy, which COVID has given rise to. I think you are one of the few companies that has really responded to the challenge and the concerns of consumers in new sanitizer products, paper towels, as opposed to hand dryers and other products. So if you could elaborate on how the notion of the touchless economy was reflected in your product choices. But relatedly, I am curious personally how you handled the shortage of paper products in March, April of last year. So this is really two questions into one, and I apologize for wanting to add
no problem.
touch to that.
Yeah, look, on your first one first, right? Yeah, but I give credit, first of all, to our customers and through consumers that said, hey, look, we want more of this and less of that. We want more of your product. We want more of the dispensing solution, which is part of the experience, right? Hands off, preferably, which is our premium product, right? It's not just a paper towel that you grab out of a basket, but it's one that you say, look, I can dispense it. I don't have to touch it. Nobody else touched it before that. It's clean. It's touchless. And, and many people said, well, this is much more hygienic today than the air blowers. That is not something that we brought onto others. This is what people brought to us, and we were happy to work and devote as many resources to it because that's our business. We're really good at it, and we know it, and we've been innovating at it for a long time. So that's great. But it goes a little bit, and staying on the product side a little bit longer, John, because the answer is yeah, of course we grabbed that opportunity. We're good at it. We know stuff about it, and now let's go. On the hand sanitizer, as an example, it was. As much as the growth is phenomenal, as I told you, compared to everything else we do, it's been a reasonable small business. We ventured into it a few years ago, started to see where does it go, and then COVID took off. Wow, big opportunity, as you said. But it's not just the product, but it's also sometimes the technology around it, which again contributes to the experience. Concrete example, Hartsfield Airport obviously wanted a lot of these sanitizing dispensers around the airport. I think the number from us is 700 or something like that. They wanted them now, but they did not, and kudos to them again, they did not want to have just a dispenser and then run the risk of, is the dispenser empty? Because they know having an empty dispenser is worse than having no dispenser. The disappointment and the experience is big. So how do you do that in these times? Well, we've been working on a technology which we call Colo, which basically connects that dispenser and its content through a wireless information and database and visualizes the data and gives you information up to the minute about, one, is the dispenser full? Is it becoming nearly empty? Is it working, right? And if it is not, or wherever it is, you'll be aware of that and you can service it better. So again, great boost for that technology in times when suddenly people place the premium on it. So John, we were working on some of these things before. Thankfully enough, our customers again collaborated and said, let's try this out, let's scale it up, and let's work together. So that's number one. Number two, though, is I would also say, the product is always easy and discernible, right? It's so practical in terms of we use it, we know it, etc. But I remember early in COVID when our suppliers said, well, when I deliver goods, raw material, whatever, to your plant, or the people in the plant said, well, when they come and deliver it and they want to hand me a piece of paper called a bill of lading in the good old fashioned way. You remember those times when nobody wanted to touch anything? Well, it was our people who came up and devised that, hey, we can do this electronically and we can do it fast and we can do it everywhere, right? I don't know to what extent some of the increased hand washing, hygiene, touchless, how these behaviors will get institutionalized, how long they will endure, and to what extent. But I believe some things like, can you imagine us going back to a paper-based bill of lading if we figure out how to do this electronically much better, much more efficiently? No, and I think that's just the time that we're that we're in. So you ask about the product. I tried to expand it besides the product. And your other question, John, did I touch on that or not yet?
Yes, you did. It's reactive innovation, but with foresight.
Absolutely.
Capitalizing on existing potential skills and then reacting to the challenge of the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. We next turn to the next question, and Annie, you will be handling that.
Sure, yeah. So thanks, Christian. My first question is, your company, Georgia Pacific, is big, complex, and diverse. And how difficult it was to manage 30,000 plus employees across 150 facilities and 30,000 suppliers in North and South America. In terms of complexity of the operation, I cannot manage my household.
Well, great question, Ani. Near and dear to my heart. Number one, I cannot manage my household either. So, and therefore, it is a pretty close conclusion that I cannot manage in the sense of organize, run, take all the decisions, know everything that goes on, know the best answers, or have any answers for the matter, because I'm not much of a subject expert in much of anything. So you just say, really, the answer is you can't. And a much company, and even companies that are much smaller and less complex, and forget about, you know, companies that are bigger for it, I don't think it works that way. And we realize that as a business philosophy, and therefore we go back and say, look, what we have to have is a set of guiding principles, a business philosophy, a certain set of values, etc., which we can loosely call vision. And I'm not going to try to give an expose, but that is a key parameter. It's what we all start with. But then you got to have the right people in it. They got to share your values. They got to be lifelong learners. They got to be contribution motivated. They want to do something good, right, and contribute to the best of ability. And then you got to put them in the right spots for that. You're going to have knowledge system in a place that tell you, is that stuff working? And what is it doing and what's not working, etc. It's usually a combination of both, but also they put the information at the fingertips of those that are really de facto running it, which are the 30,000 people, right? In a lot of small ways every day. You got to give them the decision-making power that is adequate for the knowledge and their expertise and for the role. And ultimately, we believe you got to set the right incentives to kind of, again, align incentives between the owner, the shareholder, management, and employees to do the right thing. I know that's a, 5-cent answer on that, but our role is to best establish that environment, create it, live it, breathe it, teach it, and make people embrace it. And then good things will happen. I don't run anything. I'm accountable for everything that happens in the end, but I always say I don't really run anything. And the people do it. And that's the only way that I know how it works.
Great. Wonderful. Thanks, John.
Yes, I want to pursue the line of questioning, if I may, by focusing a little more on innovation. As you said, in the virtuous cycle you presented, puts a great deal of emphasis on creating consumer value. We talked a little bit about sanitizer, but I've heard about another such product innovation called paper padded mailer. Tell us more, and are there other such product innovations, and are they typical of the rate at which you are producing a pipeline of new products in anticipation of future opportunities and crises?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that. It's always exciting to kind of make it, not just ethereal and theory, but also, hey, how does it translate? And is there a product people can buy and how it relates to our problems and so I'll give an example of each for brevity, John. One, we clearly, and I'll come back to the mailers as my second example, but the first one is, we thought and had been working on a set of technology that would allow companies in the fast food sector that, again, do a lot of paper cups and drinks, etc. That's a daily bread and butter, if you will. Rather than put a lid on there, that you have an automated system of sealing that cup, and you can even put it on its head, and it's spill proof and all that kind of stuff, very hygienic, etc. We were working on that touchless sealing, if you will, technology way before COVID. Can you imagine, or would you be surprised if I told you, John, that there was mild interest from our customers? And can you imagine, would you be surprised if I told you that during COVID, they suddenly said, can we try this stuff? And at hundreds of stores at the same time. And many of them came towards us. I'm not surprised. So here I would just say, yeah, we were thinking about that before, but COVID brought about a different sense of urgency and a need and a preference for that kind of technology. So an exciting path. Now, on the mailer part, we cannot take credit for us having been working on that before that. It's actually a small company called Amazon that approached us with it and said, well, we ship quite a lot of packages to people and we're shipping more and more. And, some of our consumers complain that, there's such a big box for such a small item, and how do you do it? Many of the items could actually be just as well protected and shipped in mailers, and there would be much less waste in that. But we're doing it today. The problem is these are plastic padded mailers. They do their job, they're competitive and all that. The problem is the consumer says, I still can't recycle them. So through a cooperation of raw material vendors, OEM manufacturer machinery, Amazon pulling it all together, they said, would you, Georgia Pacific, with the capabilities you have, not be the one that stands up a factory for us? And we stood it up in the middle of COVID. I've never seen the plant other than through video. In Nevada, we're expanding it as we speak, and we're talking to Amazon about the next couple of factories. Very, very exciting. But again, the emphasis of here collaboration with customers and having the consumer in the eye about what problem does it solve today. Again, very excited about both of these.
Thank you, Christian, for sharing this example. Annie, the next question is yours.
Yes, thank you, John. So, Christian, I believe that Georgia Pacific has sold its non-woven business line, tabletop food pads, hygiene-related products. Does it mean this product line is not promising to you?
Well, I'll do a slight correction first. It's not been sold yet. We have an agreement between us and the buyer, but it still needs to go to regulatory approval. In the meantime, we're keep on operating it. Annie, the short answer is no. I think this is a very promising market. Number one statement. Number two is, but we recognize one thing, and our owner says something along the lines of, we don't have a monopoly on value creation, and we don't. The company that is buying this Gladfelter, I mean, this is their line of business. They're global. They happen to be a customer of ours too for our cellulose products. And they had bought a location of ours in Europe. It was the only one that we had where we said, well, that doesn't give us a competitive advantage in Europe. That's harder. They bought it and they came back and said, we want to buy the other one too. And whenever someone really thinks that they have the capability to do even better, synergies, value creation, what have you, and therefore they value it better than ours, at least we listen. And in this case, it was such a situation where they think they can add more value than we can. They're probably right, and therefore there was a deal. But very exciting market. We weren't trying to sell it, but we took the opportunity to look into it.
Great, thank you. Mm-hmm. John?
Yes, I'd like to ask you a question on issues of environment, implementing a more of a circular economy, recycling, which of course is an important topic for Georgia Power. Leading and showing the way to many others, not only in your value chain, but among your suppliers and your users. What can you tell us about that? It's a very broad topic, I realize, but I would be remiss.
It is a very broad topic, and you ask a broad question. So I'll take the liberty and tell you a couple of thoughts that come to mind. Number one, forget Georgia Pacific. I think the world is more consumers, people, society, and then through different, and you hear it through different organizations, consumers directly. You hear it through non-government organizations. You hear it through government organizations. You hear it countries coming together, industry associations. I mean, I don't think there is a way back. I mean, everyone is trying to be more, whatever you want to call it, circular, sustainable, green, whatever descriptor you want to use. I don't think that's going to be dialed back. And so it affects us. It probably would affect us in any business. If we were in any business, I'm pretty sure we could be having this discussion. We feel pretty good about, John, that, as I said before, our key raw material for most of what we make today is fiber, wood fiber. Some of it comes in recycled form, some of it comes in chips, some of it comes in sticks, as I call them, but it's wood. The great thing is it is a renewable, resource. We buy most of it here from landowners in North America. We buy a lot of it through pulp from countries like Brazil, some of it from Canada, some of it from Europe, depending on the specialty and the application. But I think our products are at the heart of this. I mean, consumers interact with them daily. And a lot of our products on the consumer side, on the packaging side, on the cellulose side, fall into the bucket that you would say, well, these are usually products that you use once. And while people realize the benefit, also we detect, and we know this, we've done research on it. I mean, people sometimes say after they've used it, they have a little bit of guilt coming along. Oh, okay, what do I do now? So they want to know that this goes into a bin that, again, doesn't end in a landfill, that preferably gets recycled, that preferably, if it doesn't get recycled, it's biodegradable, and so on and so forth. Again, lending more credibility to that circular economy, as you called it. We're in the midst of it. We got to embrace it. And we got to, convince our consumers and our customers that what we do doesn't just meet a minimum threshold, but is also better than the alternatives, that we know where our stuff comes from, that we contribute to landowners and reforestation and so on and so forth. And we're engaged as a company through associations in the broadest sense of bringing together non-government entities, sometimes tribes in Canada, if you procure the wood from close to where they are. So that work is never done. I don't think we should consider it, and we're not considering it, you got to be defensive on it. I think you can be proactive on it and positive about it, and really convince people that you can create value through, again, being a good steward of resources.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ani?
Yeah, we are now going to move into Q&A from audience. We have plenty of questions here, so I'm going to select a few Christian, for you to answer, respond to them. First question is an anonymous question from an attendee, and there's: what role does Georgia Pacific see research universities playing in these transformation, disruption, and innovation efforts?
So what role do we see for Georgia Pacific in what space, Annie? Sorry?
Research universities.
Well, I would go back to this. It's a great question. I would go back to this and just, like I said before, I emphasized, our success depends on establishing mutually beneficial, wide knowledge networks. So universities is just one of them. I mean, you can clearly come to at least a couple of things. One is the research, but two is also just like cooperation, even on talent, right? But even through Georgia Tech, for example, I mean, a cooperation in the not too distant past about saying, hey, we got to rethink about what's possible in supply chain. You have Supply Chain Management Institute. How can we bring your research capabilities together with our industry experience and work? And it's profitable for you, it's profitable for us. You can take the learnings that you take from dealing with an industry, a company that's trying to solve real problem. We can take advantage of the research that you've done and all your brain power and capabilities and your learnings from other industries. It's just a real concrete example of that is, at once programmatic at a fundamental level, Ani, that says, hey, look, these entities are out there, they do research, what can they bring to the table and how can I help them? That's one thing. And at the same time is also very, very opportunistic in sense of what problems am I trying to solve and who can most specifically help me, and you bring those together. But whether that's paper technology, whether that's supply chain, whether that's biofuels, there's a lot of that where, again, cooperating with institutions in the higher learning, if you will, is just part of the game.
Okay, great, thanks. That I'll go to the second question now. Okay, second question is pretty long. So
That's the hardest task. Select a question.
Again, this is an anonymous question. The changes which you have done in Georgia Pacific during COVID, will you be continuing after COVID is over? Because they are so effective.
Well, again, a great question. The truthful answer is, would number one be, A, it depends, and two, I don't know. I mean, let's put it, I give you one concrete example, right? We make some bets today and about the future. How the bets will pan out, time will tell. An example, Ani, we talked about dispenser hygiene touchless. Right. We are focusing a lot of our attention and resources to actually, with our customers and distributors, to get these dispensers on the wall. They want them today. But at the same time, we fully realize that in many of the places where they want the dispenser today and the technology, the consumption is still low by the mere fact that very few people are there. But the people that are there, you want to protect them and give them those services. So we're making bets here about, investing in the future by putting those dispensers on the wall, knowing fully well that where we make the money, which is when the paper goes through, might take longer and probably will take longer than before. I mean, so you are making some of these bets today and you hope to be carrying on, but if that is kind of wrong, then we've put way too many dispensers on the wall. Some other things you just gotta see and try. An example here is like, okay, we're having this in a Zoom way. That's how we do work today. If we're not on a production line, what if that will persist going forward? What won't? I just don't know the answer, but I can tell you pretty well that I'm sure that we will not just go back to pre-COVID times, but we will take advantage of that. And at the same time, I don't think we will only want to stay on kind of Zoom or on a virtual reality, because we think and we value the human interaction that will happen through ad hoc collisions and meetings, etc. So it's a little bit of, you got to find your way out through that as you see, and see what works.
Great, thank you. So let me go to the next question. Next question is from Felix. Any advice for students on how to network in this new virtual environment in order to obtain internships and work opportunities in Georgia Pacific now and in future? It's not going to matter, right?
That's a good one. It's a good one. It's a very specific one. Well, I have to say with one thing that may sound like a downer, but last year, we came to the conclusion that we had to pare back our internship opportunities in 2020 and possibly in 2021. I don't know the exact numbers of 2021 and projections, but we're doing less. And for the very simple reason. We thought that while we were working through a bunch of priorities and COVID and protecting people, et cetera, we would not provide the experience that interns would deserve with us just on a remote basis, or bring him in and then have no one to kind of mentor them, pay attention to, etc., or giving them a real task that they can learn and apply themselves in. That obviously will not stay around forever. But for the ones that exist, I mean, if I can give any advice, well, be flexible. And I would probably give that also outside of GP. Be flexible. It might not be exactly what you're looking for, but I'm sure, work with companies to kind of shape the experience to the best of your capability, but be open for if it doesn't fit your kind of expectation or your dreams exactly down to the detail.
Great. Okay, so next question is, has the USMC trade agreement affected Georgia Pacific business?
I would say the following way. I don't think it changed it in a real tremendous, direct, meaningful way up to date, because I don't think it really, because most of it is really us exporting goods to those markets rather than buying from those markets. I'm sure that internal trade balance is correct, and it hasn't really affected us very much in that sense. Ani, now long term, through indirectly and how it affects other industries, and that tails back to our demand, that's probably still a story to be told, but at this short notice, not really.
Okay, great. Now, next question is GP using blockchain technology for tracking raw materials or finished goods?
Not in a broad sense, Ani, or whoever asked the question, not in a broad sense, but we're certainly trying to learn from it, experimenting with it. We see some, in theory, some value and use cases and application for it, but it hasn't, quote unquote, taken off in a bold and scaled way up to this point.
Sure. Okay. Understand. Thank you. Next question is, Christian, GP is proactive, innovative with CSR mindsets. Could you say more about Juno machine? It seems to be a solution for environmental issues. Is it designed for households as well as industries use?
Well, the answer, as I said before, it is very exciting, and we do believe and have a high degree of confidence that ultimately we could go to the, call it, curbside of households. But we also know that in households, in the recycling bin, more stuff goes in that we can't deal with, as opposed to how businesses segregate waste, right? Recyclables from non. And for example, we couldn't deal very well with hospital waste, syringes or hazardous waste or anything like that. But it's very easy to say, I'm not going to go and pick it up from hospitals. I'm not going to source it from there. That's easier. It's harder to make the distinctions. I'm not going to take the bin from Ani, but I'm going to take John's. That's more complex. We ultimately believe that the technology will be useful for that too. Might have to make some refinements. But at the beginning, there is like, several hundred tons of municipal waste from businesses that goes into landfills. So the area of application is wide and bold. So that's where we're starting.
Okay, great. Thank you. So my next question is, what is the biggest challenge that Georgia Pacific may face in next 10 years?
Well, that is a great question. I would just say this: continuing, the biggest opportunity and challenges is if we don't do those things that I said, and I would start by saying really enabling the tens of thousands of our employees and those people, companies, yourselves, institutions that we cooperate with. If we are really not successful in establishing this win-win relationship, then they won't want to choose Georgia Pacific as the place to kind of contribute to, share knowledge with, etc., collaborate. So that is the biggest, and we gotta continue doing that. I think it's very, very, very important to ensure that our employees, and here I'm going to carve out one set of employees, specifically those that are our majority, that are in operations, and that might wonder about, well, if you put sensors in, if you put technology in, if you put automation, etc., where do I get out of this? We have to help them. We can't do it for them, but we have to help them continuing to learn, apply their skills in ways that they have good, solid, rewarding, fulfilling jobs for the future. Can't do it for them, but can help them do it. I think that is, for me, the biggest challenge here, because that's the potential of human nature, and that's we want to avail ourselves of, and we want our people to feel excited about that and embrace disruption rather than kind of resist it.
Right. So next question is from Alain Lafoucault. One of the big change with 2020 was the standardization of the work from home possibility. This has created a difference between manufacturing workers and administration employees. Do you see work from home continuing after the pandemic, and how do you manage the frustration of those employees who can't?
Well, so if I focus my attention to those that are not on the machines but can work from home, etc., again, it falls into a category. I don't know how it will shake out. I suspect, though, as I said before, that there will not be a one-size-fits-all. Everyone's different. The roles are different. And our response to it is we won't have a one-size-fits-all top-down answer for everyone, but we will have to equip the supervisors and allow the supervisors to make the appropriate distinctions and come up with the answer in concert with the employees, not just what the employee wishes, but how they can create the most value. And I suspect, Ani, that this will be, a wide mix of things, but I do not expect the world or GP to go back and operate as much like in the office, in location, to the extent that we were before COVID.
Right, great. So next question is from me, based on a question which I received in Q&A. Georgia Pacific is very prominent in Georgia and Atlanta, and has done a lot of efforts towards diversity in employment and promoting about it, championing it. Some of your colleagues are my friends. I would like to know your thoughts about how we can become inclusionary and bring more diversity in workers.
Well, super question, and always a challenge. The way we think about this is the following. Number one, everyone is different and needs to be treated equally, in a sense, but equally recognizing they're an individual. So it's both equal in that sense. Everybody gets the treatment, and everybody gets the respect and the attention of an individual. Two, we got to create not just diversity in the sense of you can create diversity reasonably quickly. You put different people on the bus and it looks diverse and say, oh, I've achieved something. That does not mean that you have achieved the sense of belonging that I think people really value. And that comes only with inclusion. So our challenge is not just to treat everyone as an individual, but also allow everyone to be included by weighing in the way they can best contribute in the roles. And thirdly, allow them again to grow as much as they can to continue furthering that. I think if we do these things, and they're more easily said than done, then I think people will say, oh, look, I can succeed there. People like me can succeed there, not because of what they look like or call themselves or whatever, but because we're all treated as individuals. We're all in an environment where we can contribute the best and where we get respected accordingly. I feel included, I belong, this is good. That's, I think, is what the answer is. Wonderful.
Well, that wraps up the Q&A question and almost our time. I will request John to say a few words, and then I will wrap it up the session. John?
Thank you very much, Christian. You have really opened new vistas, and you have allowed us to benefit from your insights and your experience this past 12 months. Doesn't seem like 12 months, it seems like many years. We certainly hope that the COVID crisis will resolve itself fairly quickly. We'll achieve herd immunity. And at least for those of us who want to, we can go back to the office. I noticed that Goldman Sachs was making quite a point in a recent webinar on its desire to bring back some of its traders back to the office. It's great to have had the opportunity to talk with you. We hope we can share the video with the audience. Annie, you can tell us a little more when the video will be available.
Sure.
On YouTube.
Great. So once again, thank you, Christian. We really appreciate it. And this was a great kickoff, so to say. Hopefully we will get a chance to bring you back in our programming this year, later part of this year, in our annual conference, which is on October 5th and 6th. And our next program, which is maybe of interest to audience here, is we are going now geopolitical on March 18th of India-China border issues and the likelihood of its impact on economic and business worldwide. And then so on and so forth. There are some other events. We would be sending our audience all the information. And I want to thank you and all the audience for joining us today. With this, I would like to close the session with your permission.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much, John, Annie. Great questions from the audience. Great questions from you. Thanks for bearing with me. And I hope there were at least one or two nuggets for some of the people in the audience. Yes. Then we've accomplished something. And again, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
And Christian, when we go back live face-to-face, perhaps we can bring you to Georgia Tech again.
That would be great. That would absolutely be great. I would look forward to that, John.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
To you all.
Take care. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.